Man, I'm kind of bored. I don't know about you, but I could go to the mall. Do you want to go to the mall? Yeah? You free? All right, let's go, man. Oh, wait. The mall is right here. Howdy, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of PSR. Today, it is my great joy to bring you a review of the B.E. Meyers MAWL C1 Plus. To my knowledge, this laser aiming device is the most expensive civilian laser on the market. I couldn't afford to buy this myself, so I am borrowing it. And I'm actually borrowing it from one of you. Yes, that's right. This MAWL C1 Plus could be yours. So I'm partnering with Fanathem.com to help support the channel. Guys, I am getting throttled by YouTube. My videos, most of them, get demonetized and or age restricted. And I'm not here for a pity party. I love my job. I love making this content for you guys, but it's hard to pay the bills from just YouTube alone. So that's where you guys come in. If you guys feel like supporting me and supporting the content that I'm making so I can make more, something like this helps a ton. You guys get a merch item with your purchase. So you get something physical for your purchase to get entered to win this thing. If I had to just say a couple words about it, it kicks ass. So if you guys are interested in supporting the channel, you get a merch item like I said, and it goes to help support ammo costs and other stuff like that on the channel, then go to fanathem.com/PSR. That's fanathem.com/PSR. The link will be in the description so you guys can potentially own this thing. So big thank you to Fanathem, a veteran-owned small business that keeps sending me cool shit to do reviews on. So with that said, guys, we're gonna get right into this, but first I gotta thank the channel sponsor for PSR, and as always, that is Aves Engineering. Guys, if you're into the squirted kind of projects like the Mac or Glizzy type of squirted projects, you're gonna absolutely love Aves Engineering because they make the best high quality rails for your DIY glizzies. And I would never suggest squirting out a glong. You wouldn't do that. They got a ton of Mac uppers as well as other parts like grips and accessories. Never in a million years use PSR for 10% off your entire order from Aves Rails. And thank you a ton to Aves for sponsoring this channel. Guys, I also got a new TV show on We the Free. It is awesome. I filmed it all at Aves's machine shop, building some crazy stuff. I highly recommend you check that out. And definitely never use code PSR for your subscription on that as well. All right, so the B.E. Meyers MAWL C1 Plus. Before I get into the details about this particular laser, I wanted to cover a little bit of the history of B.E. Meyers because it's pretty cool. So in the package, when you get your MAWL, they give you this pamphlet, and it gives you an idea of just the massive amount of stuff that B.E. Meyers makes, predominantly for the U.S. government and the U.S. military. In the pamphlet, to start it off, you get a few photos of Brad and Nancy over here, and then Brad just giving her absolute shit with the bell fed. That's when you know you're a true enthusiast right there. That's the founder of the company. So a little bit of history on B.E. Meyers. Brad and Nancy Meyers began the company in 1974 by combining Brad's hobby of scuba diving with his knowledge of explosives and passion for the unorthodox. Knowledge of explosives? I like it. Operating out of their home in Seattle, Washington, they founded C-Mesh Corporation, a unique underwater demolition company that started clearing away subsurface debris in the shipyards of Puget Sound. This evolved into providing a service for large ships to clear marine growth with their hulls while at anchor. With his patented method of utilizing a low-yield explosive mesh system, Brad was able to create a high-pressure wave effect that would clear barnacles from the ship but leave the steel hull undamaged. As operations and insurance costs increased, gosh, I'm not sure why insurance would be so high. I mean, you're only using explosives to clear off barnacles from the bottom of ships. And thus, C-Mesh Corporation became difficult to sustain and later evolved into B.E. Meyers Co. Inc. in 1974. Brad was interested in optics and astronomy and started an astronomy business out of their small home, successfully selling a variety of telescopes and other equipment throughout the typically cloudy Pacific Northwest. During this time, Brad began experimenting with early night vision tubes and created some of the first systems sold commercially to police departments across the U.S., resulting in a line of night vision solutions and long-range surveillance systems for state and federal law enforcement. High-power infrared and visible lasers for weapons and military applications followed, and the company's future was forged. That's a pretty cool origin story, honestly. B.E. Meyers was literally founded by a dude in his garage who was just autistic about explosives and scuba diving. So that is a little bit of history and background on B.E. Meyers & Co. And like many American success stories, it started in a garage. We're gonna talk all about the MAWL and what it does, how it does it. But first I wanna just introduce you to the gun that I put it on. This is the Brownell's Gen 3 BRN-180. The BRN-180 uses the AR-18 structure in terms of it uses a gas piston and it is using a bufferless setup, so everything is contained inside the upper receiver. The changes to the Gen 3 I think are pretty cool. The biggest one is probably going to be this left-handed charging handle. In the previous generations, it was on the right. Also, the gas block is adjustable and it has 4 positions now. This particular gun is in 300 blackout. I think it's right around a 9-inch barrel. It has an M-LOK handguard. The lower itself is a Brownell's BRN-180 lower, and it comes with a Picatinny interface on the back, which I have a JMAC brace on with the tail hook. In here, I've got a Rise Armament trigger. It is a sick trigger. I really like this one. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's a Rise Armament trigger and I love it. Moving forward here, we've got Surefire clone, not a real one, but I just have that mounted to my tape switch here, and I'm using the MAWL's integrated pressure pad here to control the laser. This hand grip, hand stop is by Part and Trap. They're making their way into the business now. This is an additively manufactured grip. I really like the way I can kind of just sit my hand right here with the 3 fingers forward and the pinky behind. It offers a good amount of grip. The suppressor we have on here is the Dead Air Sandman X. I've been really happy with this thing. There is a little bit of first round pop, but I really like the suppressor. It is very durable, and a 300 blackout subs is going to be just like very easy for this thing to handle. But you can go up to 308 with this thing on a belt fed and it'll be fine. Lastly, we have something new on the channel. This is the Dot Technologies holographic sight. So this is called the EHS1, and it is a real holographic sight. I think this is maybe only like the 2nd or 3rd holographic sight that's ever been released. So that's pretty exciting. I'm still testing with it, still checking it out, but I do like that it kind of has an integrated riser and it has a smaller footprint than the EOTech, which is an advantage to this thing. So as far as the ammunition used, we were using Phantom Defense Subsonic 220 grains. The gas position setting I set to 4, which is actually the most gas, I believe, to be able to cycle those subs. All right, so let's get to the star of the show, BE Meyer's MAWL C1 Plus. So this is a civilian version of their MAWL laser. Unlike the military, the civilian market, unfortunately, is subject to the FDA. More or less what the FDA does, without getting too into the weeds, is they set a civilian laser power limit. The military is not subjected to this, but civilians are, and for some reason the Food and Drug Administration is in charge of radioactive emitting devices, including lasers. So if that's the case and there's a ceiling on how powerful a laser can be for civilians, why would you even get something like this? Well, this has been out since 2016, and in 2016 they were, I believe, the first ones to do this. So this uses V-cell technology. It's in a ton of lasers now, including the Iris or the AMMJ Penumbra and a number of other lasers. Essentially what BE Meyers did to get around the problem of having to conform to the FDA laser standards is they took, instead of one laser with a minimum power output, they combined a ton of lasers, a ton of tiny lasers, all giving a certain amount of power that was under the threshold, and combined them using a lens to kind of pinpoint that laser and make it more powerful. So it's really using a ton of tiny lasers to make that image. My first-hand experience with the MAWL wasn't actually shooting it, it was watching Ian from Forgotten Weapons during the Moons Out match. He was using a MAWL on his 5.56 converted Mac 11 machine gun. He shot this match using a 5.56 rifle but with a Mac 11 lower, and Ian, I got to just watch as he shot this stage where we had to shoot pretty far. I think it was around maybe 150 yards, which isn't that far on the flat range, but we were in the middle of the dark in the woods. It was hard for people to hit that target, and he was hitting it very consistently, and I was looking at it through my nods, and this thing was so bright. I was like, damn, okay, the MAWL is legit, dude. Like, that's crazy. And I believe his was just a regular civilian power one. So when I saw that, I was like, damn, I would love to try one of those. And so here we are. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the standard operating procedure with this laser, because it's different than a lot of other lasers out there. So unlike your traditional boxy kind of lasers that go on the end of the gun, the MAWL takes a totally different approach. Instead, it kind of resembles like an extremely torqued flashlight, where it's sitting offset on the side of your gun. BE Meyers designed it that way so that it would be all in one, and you wouldn't necessarily need pressure pads and additional wires coming out of this thing. That's not to say that they didn't include those ports, because the ports are right here on the back, and there's 2 of them, which is kind of unique. So you've got your pressure pad right here, which is part of the body of the unit. You've got your head, and you've got your tail cap. The cool thing about the MAWL is that if you're a lefty, you can swap this. So you can swap it so it's coming around this side, and that is really cool. And I would say that the biggest positive about this laser is probably its modularity and ergonomics. And that's where this switch comes into play. So this is a power switch. This changes from low power to medium power, and then this got this little detent here where you push it forward and it's in high power mode. I'm pretty sure most of the military lasers also have this little button that you have to press down to get full power, but there may be one version that doesn't have it. I personally didn't have too much of a problem just switching that. I could do it with one hand. I feel like with the civilian version though, You don't really need that. I wish that they wouldn't have included that, but I guess they just want to prevent people from going from low power to all the way to the high power by accident. Another non-traditional approach to this laser sits in the head of the unit, where you select your on and off and vis laser modes. So you've got your off button and the arrow is pointed there. Then you can go to your vis right there, and then your infrared all the way over here. This front lens section is removable and you can take it out to clean anything in there. The reason why they put that in there, I think, has to do with potential dirt and debris getting on there and the ease of just removing this thing and cleaning it out. And I think because it's encapsulated with this polymer shell, it makes it that much more durable. The other really cool thing that I discovered in looking at this thing is there's this set screw right here, and you can change depending on your type of tube. I think Photonis tubes is this hole here, but you can remove this little screw and then put it in that hole, and it actually changes the output depending on the tube you're using. I've never heard of any laser being able to do that. And you're like, well, how does it know which hole it's in? It's just a screw. Well, I learned that this screw, this blue screw, has a magnetic ending on it, and this laser knows which hole you've put it in because of the magnet. And I just think that's super cool. So another industry that uses this kind of technology with the magnets is the scuba industry. I think it's super cool that there's a nod to that in this laser all the way back, going back to Brad, the explosive diver. That is awesome. Right here, you've got your point of impact adjustments. There is another one under here under the flashlight, which ideally you would not want your flashlight right there, but I zeroed it before I put the flashlight on. That is your adjustment in terms of your zero. So the cool thing about this tail cap is there are two crane plug leads. So you can plug two different switches in there if you want. I don't see the need for it, but that option is there. Which leads me to the switches of this thing. So the lowest power is going to be like a CQB mode. And the whole ethos behind this thing is you want it to be as easy and quick as possible to switch between your modes. And I think the MAWL does this better than any other laser. And this is how it works. This is on low power mode. This is medium power. And like I said, that's full power. So medium, low. The low power mode is centered around kind of a CQB setting where you're going to be indoors, small, tight, confined spaces where you need a flood. And that is what the low power mode does. It's like a flood. It's not a concentrated beam. You're going to control that mode with this switch right here, the closest switch to you. So closer means wider. The second switch, which is further away from you, means tighter. The laser kind of follows suit with the illuminator. The laser in the CQB setting is a lower power, and so is the illuminator. And then you get up to your medium power setting, and in the lower power CQB setting, the illuminator on the low setting, it's just like a huge beam, very big flood, which I honestly just don't really know how they do it, but B.E. Meyer's magic. So let's just say you're clearing a house and you're gonna use this setting on the low power. Let's say you got a long hallway and you wanna reach out and see more. So then you would switch it to the medium power setting, and depending on how far that object away is that you want to see or identify, you could use the flood or you could use this button to get it a little tighter. And so that's what these buttons are for. So each button has a different illuminator beam pattern. Switching to the high, it's the same vibe, but just way brighter. You can do a flood with this button, but it's going to be pretty damn bright. And with this further away button, the illuminator gets tight and it becomes the Eye of Sauron.
All right, so here is the CQB low power setting. Here's the just laser only on the MAWL. This is the CQB setting on the medium power setting. And here is the tight illuminator and laser on the medium power setting. This is the fully torqued mode, CQB, and the Eye of Sauron. Super freaking bright.
So that's a little walkthrough about the controls of this thing. Like I said, you can switch it from left to right in terms of where this whole body is, which is really neat for your left-handed shooters. Also, I will say the clamp on this thing is solid as shit, dude. It is actually funny because they included a warning in the instructions that says not to tighten this too hard because you may damage your rail. That's a very serious product when they're not worried about their laser breaking, but you breaking the rail. All right, so I've explained the controls. Let's talk a little bit about what it was like to use. I know there's been a lot of other videos about the MAWL, and so I wanted to kind of compare the MAWL with some of the other lasers that I own. Starting off at the cheapest, we had an SMS laser HFX-C. This is one of the least expensive lasers in terms of the power output that you get, but it's not waterproof, $250. So it's a very inexpensive laser. In addition to that, I brought along the AMMJ Penumbra. This laser, like the MAWL, uses a V-cell technology inside. It is a pretty solid performing laser. laser, I will say. Then I had the LS321 from Holosun, which was my very first laser that I learned on. A solid laser, but pretty low performing when you compare it to some of the other options, especially now in the market. The other laser I brought along that I was super curious to compare it with the MAWL is the newer Holosun Iris. This laser, in addition to the Penumbra and the MAWL, also has V-cell technology in it.
Here we are with the SMS laser. This is on the high power setting. All right, this is the Holosun LS321. And guys, it's not even close. The LS321 just, it doesn't have the illuminator. This is the AMMJ Penumbra. Disregard that the IR illuminator and the laser aren't really lined up, but the Penumbra is pretty damn bright, honestly. This is the full power Penumbra. That is looking very close to the MAWL, actually. All right, here we go with the Holosun Iris on high power. And that's pretty bright, dude. Not gonna lie. That's right on par with the MAWL, it feels like. You can concentrate the beam. You can make it tighter, wider, very easily. All right, guys, this is the MAWL I have sore on right here. That is so bright. Wow, that is so torqued and bright. Oh my goodness.
So you saw in the video a comparison of all of the lasers. In terms of all of the high power modes, the MAWL reigns supreme. It is just a little bit brighter than the Penumbra and the Iris. I'm not sure how they're doing that, but I guess that's what you get when you buy a $3,700 laser. Now, I haven't tried the military version of this thing. I bet it absolutely kicks ass, but on the high power civilian mode, it is bright as shit. I have no doubt out to like 400, 500 yards, I'd be able to shoot with it. For this test, we shot between 80 and 100 yards max. The full power mode on the MAWL was too bright for that. One of the things I noticed the MAWL absolutely outperformed the other lasers with was the lightsaber effect. So when you put on your laser, you can see kind of like this line. With the MAWL, it's much harder to see that kind of lightsaber effect. I'm not exactly sure how the MAWL is doing this, but it was noticeably less than the other lasers that we tested. As far as brightness goes, the MAWL won by a little bit, and probably in second came in a tie between the Penumbra and the Iris. They're very similar. I will say I really do like the changes that Holosun made with the Iris.
We got the MAWL on the left and the Holosun Iris on the right. The MAWL's just a tad brighter and the illuminator size is a little bit bigger. Maybe the MAWL laser's just a tiny bit crisper and a little bit brighter. Kind of looks like titties.
But B.E. Myers, given that this came out a long time before the Iris, had it figured out. They decided, instead of doing like a switch where you would kind of slowly increase the size of that illuminator, they just said, you know what, no one's gonna mess with medium, and we're just gonna make it flood the entire field or Eye of Sauron. The ability to switch between power modes with just your thumb is super intuitive, and it just makes a whole lot of sense. And in addition to that, having these buttons control each of the different kind of scenarios that you'd be in is genius. Closer to me is flood the whole area. Farther from me is pinpoint a spot and shoot. I will say these buttons, if you can hear them, very tactile. They give a good amount of response, good click to them, and this switch is really the same way. It is very solid. Even though it's plastic, I'm sure they had to make sure the tolerances were there in case some dirt or grime got in it, but it doesn't feel cheap or anything like that. The actual housing, the body of it, is aluminum and it's just beautifully crafted. There's no machine marks or anything. It is solid as hell. With regards to my shooting impressions of this laser, the ability to swap between modes, that is the ethos of this laser. Like, they took an approach where they just said, we want the operator to be able to just quickly change between settings and scenarios, and that is what the MAWL does best. I would hit the CQB setting, the closer flood button, hits a couple close targets, maybe around 20 or 30 yards, and then with a flip of a switch, for those longer targets, I would hit the Eye of Sauron and be able to drill at, 100 yards easy. As far as the performance of the gun and suppressor, I did notice that when I first shot this gun, the carbon buildup got a little bit heavy on the gas adjustment and it seized up, and I talked to Brown Ellis about it. They said it's a pretty common thing, but to just kind of keep shooting it and it would kind of loosen up a little bit. And I've probably gotten at least 500 rounds on this thing. 300 blackout, not super cheap to shoot, but since then I've been really happy with it after that issue got resolved on its own. So this is an awesome laser and it's really fun to shoot with, but what were some of the downsides, if any? So I would say the biggest downside of the MAWL is probably its size in terms of just how long it is and the weight of it. I think it's a pretty heavy laser compared to some of the other options. It takes up a good amount of this part of the gun, whereas a lot of your box lasers are going to be smaller, especially the Iris, which is a very small unit. This thing is a heckin' chunker compared to a lot of other lasers. But with that said, unlike a lot of other lasers, sure, you can run other switches, but in my opinion, there's no need for that. And like I said before, this is designed for that ease of use and ergonomics, not necessarily designed around the size. Now, B.E. Meyers does have another laser that's a traditional box design called the Dagger, and I think it's a pretty hard one to get. I don't even think it's available to civilians, but that thing I would be really interested in checking out. It's only like $4,500. So yeah, I showed you a little comparison between some of the other lasers on the market. It would be cool to try it against like a full power PEC, but I don't unfortunately have one of those. I'm extremely impressed with this thing. I wish I had one. This thing is just, not only is it like an Instagram flex, which is 90% of the people have them, that's what they use it for, but it's an actually amazing tool. The ease of use of it, the ergonomics, the ability to switch between modes is genius, and it's an awesome product. Is it worth $3,700 MSRP? Like everything, it depends on your use case. If you are an avid night vision shooter and you love shooting under nods, or let's say you want the best laser to kill hogs and coyotes on your ranch or whatever it is, and you want the best of the best, this laser is it. This thing provides that extra ease of use and ability to change between flood and tight beam in a way that no other laser does. So let's say you're a cartel boss in Mexico. I don't know how this would reach that. Weapons don't ever get sent to Mexico, but you would probably want this thing if you're worried about someone breaking into your house and stealing all your cocaine, because you can easily switch CQB mode. Get the invaders out of your house, and then when they're running away, you can flip the high beam and use the Eye of Sauron to make sure they don't ever leave your property. So yes, whether you're a night vision snob or maybe just someone who's been saving up for a really long time for the best laser you can get, I would say this is it. But let's say you don't make six figures and you're not a cartel boss. Is this worth it? I would say no, it's not worth the $3,700 price, for the simple reason that there are other lasers like we saw in the video, like the Holosun Iris, like the AMMJ Penumbra, that damn near get really close to the power output of this thing. However, while sacrificing some of the ergonomic pleasantries involved with the MAWL. So in terms of the Penumbra, you're not going to get the ease of use of changing that size of the beam. It's a lot harder to do on the Penumbra. As well as on the Iris, you can change the size of the beam, but it's a much different situation with the CQB setting. There's no real CQB setting on the Iris to my knowledge, but you can't do it like you can do it on the MAWL. And if you're on an extreme budget and you don't need your laser to be waterproof, I would highly recommend the SMS Laser HFXC. For the cost, it is probably the best performing laser on the market. But let's just say you want to support your favorite YouTuber and get a sweet merch item like a mug while also getting entered to win this MAWL. And that brings me to a reminder, guys, if you are interested in making this MAWL yours and supporting me, someone that you watch on YouTube who gets throttled by YouTube algorithms, getting entered to win this thing would go a long way to help me out. It's a sick ass laser, guys. And I hope whoever gets this gets to put it to use, because there's a lot of people that buy night vision stuff, they become obsessed with it and then they never use it. So my hope is that this laser is going to go to someone like you who is enjoying night vision shooting and will use the shit out of it, because this thing is begging to be used, baby. So best of luck to you in winning this thing. Like I said, it's fanathem.com/PSR. That's fanathem.com/PSR. The link is in the description to get entered to win this thing. That's going to wrap up my review of the MAWL C1 Plus, an absolutely Chad laser. While there are less expensive lasers out there that do the same thing, maybe a little bit less performance, this thing sets itself apart with the ergonomics. There's nothing else like it. Thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a ton for me. I'm almost 5 years into this YouTube journey. I don't want to stop. I really love it. So every bit of support from you guys really helps, and I just appreciate you watching. Till the next one, we'll see ya. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. But what about that guy that just wants to support? Oh,